No one expects a knock at their door at midnight to change the course of an entire city. But when that knock carries the weight of secrets, power, and betrayal, the man who answers will discover that sometimes the real danger doesn't break in, it invites itself inside. Tonight, in the quiet suburbs of Denver, a storm is about to begin. And for one man, survival won't depend on strength, but on how much truth he's willing to reveal. The street was unusually still, wrapped in a blanket of silence broken only by the distant hum of highway traffic. David Mercer, a corporate attorney in his early 40s, was still awake, though he should have been asleep hours ago. Stacks of case files lay scattered across his oak desk, and the glow of his laptop screen painted sharp lines across his tired face. His suit jacket was draped over the chair, his tie loosened, but his mind was restless. The knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate taps. David froze, his hand hovering over his keyboard. At this hour? Nobody visited unannounced. Not here. He pushed back his chair and walked toward the front door, the sound of his footsteps echoing louder than usual on the hardwood. Through the peephole, a shadowy figure stood under the dim porchlight, hands clasped behind his back, posture straight as steel. David's pulse quickened. He opened the door a crack. The man outside stepped forward smoothly, his expression unreadable. He was tall, mid-30s, close-cropped hair, his dark trench coat glistening with the residue of rain. "David Mercer?" the man asked, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of authority. "Yes," David replied cautiously. The man's lips curved into something between a smirk and a warning. "Good. We need to talk." David tightened his grip on the door. "And you are?" The man's eyes flicked to the corner of the porch, then back to David. "Someone who knows exactly what you've been doing, and who you've been doing it for." The words hit like a hammer. David's throat went dry. For months, he had been burying secrets buried in contracts, shell companies, offshore accounts. Things no one was supposed to connect to him. Things that could destroy not just his career, but his life. "Excuse me?" David forced a laugh, trying to mask the sudden panic gnawing at his chest. "You've got the wrong man." But the visitor wasn't convinced. His gaze sharpened, dissecting every twitch in David's face. "Do I?" he asked softly. "Because I think I have exactly the right man." Before David could reply, the man stepped past him uninvited, his polished shoes silent on the wooden floor. "Hey, what are you doing?" David snapped, but his protest sounded hollow. The man moved through the foyer like he'd been here before, scanning every detail, the family photographs on the wall, the expensive art piece near the staircase. "This is a nice home," he murmured, his tone laced with quiet judgment. "Paid for with dirty money, wasn't it?" David's jaw tightened. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm calling the police." The man chuckled under his breath, turning slowly to face him. "Go ahead. Call them. Tell them everything. Tell them about the transfers to Zurich, the private meetings at the hotel downtown, the late-night calls from your burner phone. You think they won't connect the dots?" David's blood ran cold. How could this stranger know? The man closed the distance between them, his eyes like steel traps. "You've got 2 choices, David. Cooperate, or collapse. Which is it going to be?" The silence that followed was suffocating. David swallowed hard, his mind racing. Whoever this man was, he had information, dangerous information. But why confront him now? Why not just go public? Finally, David spoke, his voice low but steady. "What do you want?" The man studied him, then smiled faintly. "Not what? Who?" He leaned closer. "The man you've been protecting. The man who's pulling your strings." David's heart stuttered. Nobody was supposed to know about him. And then, like a switch, David's lawyer instincts kicked in. "You don't scare me," he said, his voice firmer now. The man's smirk deepened. That's good. Because fear won't help you survive what's coming. The room seemed to shrink as the weight of his words settled in. David needed to regain control, to find a crack in this stranger's armor. But before he could, the man reached into his coat pocket. David's muscles tensed, bracing for a weapon. Instead, the man pulled out a small black notebook and tossed it onto the desk. The cover bore no title, but David instantly recognized the handwriting scrawled inside. His own. Every hidden deal. Every name. Every signature. It was all there. David's breath caught in his throat. Where did you get this? The man's gaze hardened. Let's just say, you've been watched longer than you realize. The air thickened. David glanced at the open door behind him, wondering if he could make a run for it. But then he noticed, parked across the street, half in shadow, an unmarked black SUV. Two silhouettes sat inside, barely moving. He wasn't just dealing with one man. He was surrounded. David turned back to the intruder, his voice now trembling despite himself. What happens if I don't cooperate? The man leaned in so close David could feel his breath. Then the world will learn the truth about David Mercer. And trust me, when it does, you won't live long enough to regret it. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. David's mind was a storm, his career, his reputation, his family, everything was dangling by a thread. And then, with a chilling calm, the man delivered the final blow. You have 48 hours. Give me the name, or everything burns. David stared at him, heart pounding, searching for any sign this was a bluff. But there was none. The man turned, walking back toward the door. At the threshold, he paused, glancing over his shoulder one last time. Tick-tock, Mr. Mercer. Tick-tock. The door shut behind him with a soft click, leaving David in stunned silence. The black notebook sat open on his desk, each page a ticking time bomb. His hands shook as he flipped through the damning evidence. And then his phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. One new message. He picked it up, his eyes widening as he read the words glowing on the screen. He already knows you're wavering. If you don't deliver me in 48 hours, he'll come for you first. David's breath caught. He whispered, his voice trembling. But before he could finish the thought, the lights in his house flickered, and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. And somewhere, in the silence, a second knock echoed through the house. They say darkness is silent. But that's a lie. Because when you're alone, and the lights die suddenly, the silence screams. And every shadow feels like it's moving closer. For David Mercer, this wasn't just a blackout. This was the sound of his life unraveling, one flicker at a time. The knock echoed again. Slow. Deliberate. Louder this time. David's pulse hammered against his temples. His phone, still in his hand, buzzed once more, another message from the unknown number. He hesitated, then opened it. Don't answer the door. Not yet. David's chest tightened. If not the man from earlier, then who was standing outside? The house was steeped in blackness, save for the faint glow of his phone screen. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, wide eyes, beads of sweat on his forehead, a man caught in a trap with no way out. The knock came again. This time, followed by a voice. Mr. Mercer, open up. It's the Denver police. David froze. The police? His first instinct was relief, but then suspicion bled in. Was it really them? Or just another layer in this twisted game? He stayed silent, straining his ears. The voice came again, firmer this time. Sir, we need to speak with you. Now. David's mind raced. If it was the police, How could he explain the notebook on his desk, the offshore accounts, the shadowy visitor who had vanished into the night? But if it wasn't the police, opening that door could be the last mistake he ever made. He dialed 911 on his phone, whispering into the receiver, "This is David Mercer. There are officers outside my home. Can you confirm they're real?" The operator's voice crackled through the line. "Stay on the line, Mr. Mercer. I'm checking." Seconds stretched like hours. David's breath caught in his throat. Then the operator returned, her tone cautious. "There are no units dispatched to your address tonight." His blood ran cold. Whoever was at his door, it wasn't the police. "Mr. Mercer," the voice barked again, sharper now. "This is your last chance. Open the door." David stepped backward into the shadows, his mind screaming for an exit. But before he could react, the doorknob rattled violently. Someone was trying to get in. He grabbed the black notebook from the desk and stuffed it into his jacket pocket. His eyes darted toward the back door, the kitchen, the staircase. Where could he go? Where could he hide? The rattling stopped. Then, silence. David held his breath, listening. Nothing. Then a new sound, boots crunching across his lawn. Multiple sets. Moving around the house. They were surrounding him. David rushed upstairs, his footsteps muffled against the carpet. He slipped into the bedroom and locked the door, his chest heaving. He pressed his back against the wall, trying to think. The faint buzz of his phone vibrated again. Another message. "You have 47 hours left. They're not here to arrest you. They're here to erase you." His hands trembled as he typed back, "Who are you? Who's he?" But no reply came. Instead, the sharp shatter of glass echoed from downstairs. Someone had broken in. David's stomach twisted. He was no longer dealing with threats, this was happening, right now. He stumbled to his closet, pulling down a locked box from the top shelf. With trembling hands, he opened it to reveal a handgun, a precaution he'd never thought he'd actually use. He loaded it, the metallic click deafening in the silence. The creak of footsteps on the staircase reached his ears. Whoever was inside was moving slowly, deliberately, like a predator stalking prey. David gripped the gun tighter, sweat dripping down his temple. A shadow appeared under the door. And then, a whisper. So faint he almost thought he imagined it. "David." His throat tightened. That voice. He knew it. He stumbled back, his gun shaking in his hand. It couldn't be. The door handle turned slowly, pushing against the lock. David raised the gun, pointing at the door, his voice cracking. "Stay back." The handle stilled. Silence. Then, with a bone-chilling calm, the voice spoke again. "You can't run from this. You already chose your side." David's knees nearly buckled. The familiarity of the voice gnawed at him. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone he knew. Someone he trusted. But who? The door shuddered violently, splintering under the force of a shoulder slam. Once. Twice. David stumbled back further, his eyes darting toward the window. A two-story drop. His only chance. The third slam cracked the doorframe. It wouldn't hold much longer. David rushed to the window, fumbling with the latch. He shoved it open, the cold night air rushing in. He swung one leg over the sill, gripping the frame with one hand and the gun with the other. Behind him, the door finally burst open. The figure stepped inside, silhouetted in the darkness. David froze mid-climb, his body half out the window, half in the room. He turned his head slowly. And his eyes widened in horror. It wasn't the stranger from earlier. It wasn't an intruder in disguise. It was someone whose face he knew. whose name he had said countless times. The last person he ever expected to see standing there, weapon in hand. The figure stepped closer, their voice low and venomous. "David, you should have stayed loyal." David's breath hitched, his grip tightening on the window frame. The truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. The man pulling the strings wasn't a faceless shadow. He was standing in his bedroom right now. The gun in David's hand trembled as the figure raised their own. 2 barrels. 2 lives. And only one of them would walk away. The night held its breath. They say betrayal is sharpest when it comes from the hand you trust most. But no one ever told David Mercer that betrayal doesn't just cut you. It rewrites every memory you thought was real. The figure in his bedroom raised the gun, their shadow stretching long against the wall. David's heart slammed against his ribs, his breath shallow, his hand trembling on the trigger. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone he had eaten with, laughed with, confided in. And now, they stood between him and survival. "Put it down, David," the figure said, calm as if this were just another boardroom deal. David's voice cracked. "Why? Why you? Of all people, why?" The figure stepped closer, the faint glint of steel in their hand catching what little moonlight bled through the window. "Because you were never supposed to keep the notebook." David's eyes darted to the black notebook in his pocket. His fingers clenched around it, like a drowning man clutching a life raft. "You don't even know what's inside," he snapped. "Oh, I know exactly what's inside," the figure replied, their smile cutting through the darkness. "Names. Dates. Accounts. All the things that could burn an empire to ash. And you thought you could hold on to it without consequence?" The room seemed to shrink. The air pressed heavy on his chest. David realized something then. This wasn't just about him. Whoever these people were, they had built something far bigger, far darker than he ever imagined. And the person pointing the gun at him wasn't just a pawn. They were part of the foundation. Before David could respond, the window behind him lit up red. The sweep of headlights. A car pulling into the driveway. The figure cursed under their breath. "We're out of time." They lunged forward. David fired. The shot thundered in the small room, smoke curling into the air. The figure staggered, clutching their shoulder, but didn't fall. Instead, they snarled, eyes blazing. "You just signed your death warrant." They lunged again, knocking the gun from David's hand. It clattered across the floor, sliding under the bed. David fought back, the two of them grappling, crashing against the dresser, shattering glass. The chaos was broken only by the sound of footsteps pounding up the stairs, multiple sets. "Secure the target," a voice barked from the hall. David's stomach twisted. More of them. Whoever had pulled into the driveway wasn't here to save him. They were here to finish the job. The figure smirked through clenched teeth as they pinned David against the wall. "You hear that? They're here for you, David. And there's no escape this time." Adrenaline surged. David slammed his forehead into the figure's nose, breaking free. He dove for the bed, reaching desperately under it until his fingers brushed cold steel, the gun. He spun just as the bedroom door burst open. 3 men in black tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. David aimed wildly, but before he could fire, the figure shouted. "Alive! They want him alive!" The men surged forward. David squeezed the trigger. One dropped. Another ducked. Chaos erupted, gunfire cracking like thunder in the confined space. David dove behind the dresser, bullets splintering wood inches from his head. The figure, bleeding but still standing, barked orders like a commander on a battlefield. "Don't kill him. Not yet. The chairman wants him breathing." The chairman. The name sliced through David's panic like a blade. Who was this shadowy puppet master? And why did they want him alive? David's phone buzzed again. By some miracle, it hadn't been destroyed in the struggle. He yanked it out, the screen glowing with one chilling message. The chairman is closer than you think. Trust no one. Get out now. He didn't hesitate. David hurled the phone against the far wall as a distraction and dove for the window. He hurled himself through it, glass exploding around him. He hit the ground hard, pain ripping through his leg. But he was alive. Shouts rang out from the shattered bedroom above. Flashlights swept the yard. David staggered to his feet, limping toward the tree line. Every step was agony, but the thought of capture was worse. He plunged into the woods, branches clawing at his face, lungs burning. Behind him, beams of light cut through the darkness, voices shouting, dogs barking. The hunt was on. Minutes blurred into hours, or maybe it was only seconds. Time lost meaning in the chaos of flight. At last, David collapsed against a tree, chest heaving, his clothes torn, blood soaking into his shirt. His hand instinctively clutched the notebook still tucked in his jacket. The one thing they couldn't get. The one thing that might save him, or destroy him. A crack of a twig nearby snapped him alert. He raised the gun, eyes scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" he whispered hoarsely. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Not one of the men in black. Not the person from his bedroom. Someone else. A woman. Her face half hidden beneath a hood, her eyes sharp, calculating. "I told you not to open the door," she said softly. David froze. The messages. The warnings. The unseen voice guiding him through the nightmare. It was her. "Who are you?" David demanded, his gun never wavering. She stepped closer, her voice low, urgent. "I'm the only chance you've got. But if you want to live, you need to come with me. Right now." Before David could respond, searchlights cut through the trees. The men were closing in. The woman grabbed his arm, pulling him deeper into the forest. "You don't understand, David. The chairman doesn't just want you. He needs you. And if he gets you..." Her voice trailed off, heavy with dread. David stumbled, yanking free. "Why me? What makes me so important?" She met his eyes, her voice breaking with the weight of the truth. "Because, David, whether you like it or not, you're the last thread holding the entire conspiracy together. If you fall, everything falls." A spotlight swept over them. Shouts erupted. The dogs were only yards away. The woman grabbed his hand, eyes blazing. "Decide now. Trust me, or die here." David's chest heaved. Every instinct screamed not to trust her. But what choice did he have? He nodded, and they ran. Branches whipped past. Bullets hissed through the trees. The night itself seemed to close in on them. And then, through the darkness ahead, David saw it. A cabin. Remote. Hidden. The faint glow of light leaking from the cracks in its boarded windows. The woman pulled him toward it. "This is where it starts," she whispered. "And where you'll finally learn the truth." David's pulse thundered as the cabin loomed closer, dread coiling in his gut. Because deep down, he already knew. Whatever waited inside that cabin wasn't salvation. It was the beginning of something far worse. They say the scariest monsters don't live in the shadows. They live in plain sight. Smiling at you. Shaking your hand. Pretending to be your ally. While quietly building the noose that will hang you. David Mercer limped through the trees, the hooded woman pulling him along. His lungs burned, his blood ran cold, his mind screamed at him to stop. But he couldn't. Not now. Not when every footstep brought him closer to the cabin, the place she swore held the truth. The cabin loomed ahead like a beast crouched in the dark, its windows boarded, its walls scarred with age. Yet faint light bled from the cracks, a whisper of life inside. David froze, his instincts clawing at him. What if this is a trap? The woman didn't turn. It's not a trap. It's a reckoning. She pushed the door open, the hinges groaning. The smell hit him first, smoke, old wood, and something metallic, like dried blood. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit, a single lantern casting long shadows across the walls. Papers littered the floor. Maps, photographs, documents spread like an autopsy table of secrets. And at the center of it all, a man sat in a chair, his back to them. Calm. Waiting. David's pulse hammered. His voice cracked. Who is that? The woman's grip on his arm tightened. The man you've been running from. The chair creaked as the man rose slowly to his feet. When he turned, David's knees nearly buckled. He knew that face. Too well. The chairman, David whispered, horror draining the color from his face. It wasn't some faceless crime lord. It wasn't a shadowy figure hidden overseas. It was Richard Cole, David's oldest friend. The man who had vouched for him, defended him, shared drinks with him after late board meetings. The man David had trusted more than anyone. Richard's smile was calm. Too calm. David, he said softly, you finally made it. The woman shoved David forward, then lowered her hood. David turned sharply, his eyes widening as recognition stabbed at him again. It wasn't just anyone. It was Elena Vargas, the company's former head of security. Fired years ago under mysterious circumstances. Disappeared without a trace. Now she stood before him, alive, eyes blazing. This was never about me, Elena said. It was always about you, David. You're the one piece Richard could never control. David's voice shook. What are you talking about? Why me? Richard stepped closer, his calm demeanor never faltering. Because you were my insurance policy. You were supposed to keep the books balanced, the files hidden, the accounts clean. But then, his smile thinned. You got curious. David's mind spun. The notebook. The offshore accounts. The cryptic messages. It all snapped into place. He wasn't just caught in a conspiracy. He was part of it. And Richard had made sure of it. You set me up, David whispered, his voice breaking. Richard's smile widened. I built you, David. Every promotion, every opportunity, all of it came from me. And now you think you can bite the hand that fed you? David staggered back, his hand instinctively clutching the notebook. Richard's eyes followed the motion. Ah. The book. That's why you're still alive. That little black ledger is the only thing that can expose me. That's why I need it. That's why you, his smile hardened, are a liability. Elena stepped forward, her voice sharp. That book is more than a liability. It's the key to bringing him down. Richard chuckled. Still clinging to your fantasies of justice, Elena? You don't get it. This isn't about justice. This is about survival. Power. Control. The tension in the cabin crackled like electricity. David's chest rose and fell, his mind torn between fear and fury. All the lies. All the years. All the betrayals. And now, here it was. The truth laid bare. Elena's voice cut through the silence. David. You have a choice. Give me the notebook, and I'll make sure Richard never hurts anyone again. Richard stepped closer, his hand slipping into his jacket. Or give it to me, David, and I'll let you walk away from this. Alive. With more money than you could ever dream of. The world seemed to stop. Two voices pulling at him. Two fates. David's hands trembled as he pulled the notebook from his jacket. His eyes darted between Elena and Richard. One promised justice. The other promised power. But both carried death in their shadows. The silence stretched, then shattered. David threw the notebook onto the table. But instead of stepping back, he pulled the gun from his waistband and aimed it straight at Richard. "No more games," David said, his voice low, steel finally in his words. "It ends tonight." Richard's smile didn't waver. "Then shoot me. But you and I both know, you don't have the stomach for it." The cabin door slammed open. The men in black stormed in, guns raised, surrounding them. Richard didn't flinch. He simply spread his arms, as if welcoming them home. "You see, David," he said. "I never needed the book. I already control everything. And now, I control you." The air thickened with dread. Elena tensed, her hand reaching for the knife strapped to her boot. David gripped his gun tighter, his finger brushing the trigger. The men raised their weapons, waiting for Richard's command. And then, chaos erupted. Elena lunged, slashing one of the men across the throat. David fired, dropping another. Bullets tore through the cabin, wood splintering, lanterns toppling. Flames licked up the walls as the oil lanterns crashed and shattered. Richard ducked behind the table, yanking the notebook into his hands. His laugh rose above the gunfire, manic and wild. "You can't stop me. Not now. Not ever." David dove, tackling Richard to the ground. The two men grappled, fists slamming, the notebook sliding across the floor into the fire. Flames swallowed its pages, smoke filling the cabin. "No!" Elena screamed, shoving one of the last guards into the inferno. The notebook, every secret, every crime, burned before their eyes. Richard grinned through the blood on his face. "Now there's no proof. Nothing but ashes. And ashes don't talk." But David wasn't listening. His eyes burned with something deeper than fear, resolve. "You're wrong," he spat. "Ashes don't talk, but I do." With one final surge, David twisted Richard's own weapon against him and fired. The shot echoed like a thunderclap, silencing the chaos. Richard's body went limp. The chairman was dead. The cabin roared with fire, flames devouring walls, smoke choking the air. Elena grabbed David, pulling him toward the door. "Come on. We have to go." They stumbled out into the night, collapsing in the grass as the cabin burned behind them, an inferno swallowing every secret it once held. David lay on his back, staring at the stars through the smoke, his chest heaving. It was over. The notebook was gone. Richard was gone. The empire built on lies was collapsing in flames. Elena knelt beside him, her voice hoarse. "It's not over, David. The chairman is dead, but the network he built? The people he trained? They're still out there. And they'll be coming for you." David turned his head, his eyes meeting hers. For the first time, there was no fear in his gaze. Only resolve. "Then let them come," he whispered. "I'm done running." The camera of fate panned upward, past the burning cabin, past the forest, into the endless night sky. A story that began with secrets had ended with fire. And though the book was ash, the truth still lived. In the man who refused to be erased. Because sometimes, survival isn't just about living. It's about making sure the world remembers you were here.